Hey everybody, Tom and I of Really with Tom and Dave are excited to announce that we are moving to our own dedicated YouTube channel.
Woohoo!
Yes, and our new address will be at Really with Tom and Dave. So look for us. That's how you'll find us in the future. So please join us on we'll call it our new mothership
There you
for
go.
this podcast.
Yeah, we're starting this fresh on a new channel to ensure we bring you all the best content, conversations regarding UAP, all sorts of weird phenomenon consistently every week. We will continue to post upcoming episodes on the Stampede Podcast Network just over the next few weeks, but then we'll fully made the move over to our new channel by October, and it's very exciting.
Yeah, so please follow us over there, and we will endeavor to stay inquisitive, and hopefully you will join us on that journey. About all things that fascinate us about how confusing reality is, whether it's UAPs, which dominates a lot of our thinking lately, because they just won't go, they won't get out of the way and let other subjects have a space.
They need their say. So it is at Really with Tom and Dave, our new YouTube channel. Thanks.
Hey, welcome again to Really with Tom and Dave. I can persist in being Dave, and in the other window, I don't know which side of the screen it's on, out there in the world, but on the other window is Tom Wheeler.
I remain the Tom part, and we're staying steady with this. And it's good to see you, buddy. How are you?
I'm well. That's it. That's enough, isn't it?
Okay.
Well, I don't want to exaggerate it. Well's. That's. I aspire to wellness. That's
slightly above medium. It's slightly there's
adequately fine.
Some positivity there. Okay.
Yes.
All right. I'll take it.
I'm moderately mediocre.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you need to share anything, this is what we're here for.
And yourself, you're usually better than well. I'm going to assume you still are.
I'm doing pretty good. I'm going to segue because we have a fucking cool guest today. And
yes, we do.
There's a lot to talk about with this gentleman. I'm going to get into it. Chris Ramsay is a magician, creator, a YouTuber, and producer known for creating and starring in the True TV stunt magic show Big Trick Energy. His YouTube channel, featuring puzzle solves, cardistry, and magic, has over 7 million subscribers. His work has been featured in The New Yorker, and he recently started a new YouTube channel known as Area 52 Investigations, which includes a new podcast called Debriefed, dealing with all types of phenomenon, including UAP. Remote viewing and Project Stargate are the topics of his first episode of Debriefed. I am surrounded by Canadians today as we welcome Chris Ramsay to Really.
Here I am.
There
we go. We got a beer going.
Yeah, you got quite a light kick off that beer.
There's a little lens flare. Yeah, sweet.
With an intro like that, I had to step it up. I was running around looking for something.
Yeah. Where do you live, Chris?
Just north of Montreal.
Oh, so you're still are in Canada?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you not? You're in.
Oh no, not for years, not for decades.
Yeah. I've been bailed from that.
Yeah, I was in LA for 27 years, and I've been in New York for a little over a year and a half.
Okay. Yeah. New York's a better LA, isn't it?
I don't know.
Yes.
You know what? I've been here a year and a half, and I honestly really miss LA.
Yeah. I mean, the sunshine. I'm an hour from New York, so I'm kind of biased.
Yeah. Well, Toronto, New York, and Montreal are like a perfect triangle. Perfect isosceles triangle.
Yeah.
500 miles between each city.
The Burlington Triangle, they call it.
Yeah.
It's very eerie.
Well, speaking from LA, it's nice and warm and sunny. It's chilling here in Studio City. Nearby all these fun studios that we continue to strike from. Hey, they're close enough.
Yeah, you guys are both on that supporting the strike, obviously, right? You're directly involved.
Yes. I think
should probably be marching right now, Dave.
I'd
rather be here. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there are any more unions I can join so I can be on more strikes simultaneously.
Starting to stack up. They're starting to stack up. I think the airport workers are getting a little rowdy too. So
yeah. I mean, I was going to become a UPS driver, but that ended pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And I am DGA, that ended that negotiation went pretty quickly.
They buckle quick, that DGA.
Yeah.
They just, they consider themselves management. They don't want to argue with it. They're like, these guys. Yeah. But anyway, we're here to talk about you, Chris. How are you, sir? How are you? I mean, there's such a deep dive so much to talk to you about because the puzzles are so amazing. Your work prior to this kind of new initiative with the UAP stuff, we could spend a long time on. I love magic. I love the history of magic. I'm so fascinated just by the process. So I guess my first question for you is just like, so if I want my child to do magic, what characteristics should I be looking for? What are the qualifications to prepare them for this,
you'll know.
For this life?
you'll know.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, that kid's gonna be a magician.
Yeah.
You'll say it a little with like a sigh of desperation as well. It's not.
Oh shit.
Yeah, it was a magician or a pirate. I chose the former. So.
Mm-hmm. What were you like? What were you like as a child? Like, what was your inspiration? I mean, were you like just glued to, when Copperfield would be on, or what was the inspiration for you?
I think all of that. I often say I never really fell out of magic. Like I was shown magic at a young age from my grandfather, watched it on TV, was always interested, never wasn't. I thought it was like being a spy kind of, right? It was just cool.
Yeah.
And so just I really, really started like turning on the gears though after high school. Mm-hmm. So I started bartending, and that's where I really got my chops in. Low lighting, loud music, drunk people, great place to practice your craft, and so
good
did that for a few years. And then just took off. But as a kid, I was always curious on how things worked. Which is probably the reason I'm so fascinated with like the mysteries of the UAP phenomenon and everything else. And wait, can you say UAP phenomenon, or is that like a?
I
think it's a repetition of phenomenon, I guess.
It's phenomenon.
Yeah, exactly. And Unsolved Mysteries as a kid was I think shaped a lot of how I thought about these realms and stuff, because I was like, oh, they made a show about this, it must be real. Like that was my conclusion as a child. I was like, this guy's very serious. It's very serious music. So I better believe this, and everything. Yeah.
And that was Robert Stack. Wasn't it Robert Stack, the host of the original? Yeah. A very serious man.
Oh, great voice.
Yeah.
And generationally, I'm probably a little older, because for me it was In Search of with Leonard Nimoy.
Right.
And they had a Bigfoot episode that scared me to death. And was like forever in my brain. It was like that. I just remember he showed up at a cabin, like they opened the door and Bigfoot was at the door of this cabin in this reenactment, like this terrible costume. But I remembered it forever because my grandfather lived in Paoli, Pennsylvania, like very woodsy, and had like 3 acres of empty land. And they made us sleep my brother and I had to sleep in this like guest room with this gigantic window that just looked out on acres of blackness. And I just was always waiting for like Bigfoot to like be at the window or after that In Search of. So it definitely, those shows leave a mark.
Fire in the Sky was another one for me growing up that really scared the shit out of me. Can we say shit here?
Fuck yeah.
Yes.
All right, good, nice.
We never actually asked. we don't know.
Yeah. True.
We'll
I don't think there's any rules on.
All right, nice. We can drink here. We can smoke again.
Yeah,
drink, smoke.
Go to town.
Nice.
Yeah. If you want to have hookers over, that's fine.
Nice.
Whatever you need. Right. Whatever you need.
This podcast going late tonight.
Yeah. Fire in the Sky was one. Communion was another, which I watched. I wasn't born, I don't think, when that movie came out, but I did watch it afterwards. And those 2 movies, scared the living daylights out of me.
I think my first one was the British TV series UFO. That was one, and that came on in 1971. When I was 8? Yeah, I was 8. Yeah, I'm good at math. I can do that.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
good
8
you're
years
older
old,
than me too.
and it was, and that was the first thing that got me aware of UFOs.
They were pretty good back in the day at documenting and, you know, creating these, like, I was surprised looking back now at these vintage docs and shows that there was a lot of information there. Like it
There are some
wasn't,
great ones, yeah.
yeah,
Well, there was the great one that was actually funded by the CIA that was
right. Yeah.
narrated by Rod Serling,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
also
right.
Rod Serling, a bunch of people like the famous Cyrano, the actor played Cyrano and the Penguin. Blanking on everyone's names. Burgess Meredith was also one of the hosts of it,
Yeah.
and
Was Burgess Meredith Cyrano?
no, the other one.
Because
Yeah,
I want to see that one.
famous Cyrano
I
from the
got you.
film version.
I'm with you.
Jose Ferrar.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Okay, that makes more sense than
but yeah, that
Mickey from Rocky. Yeah.
yeah, which was a great doc. But that's the thing. So you had like a childhood interest along with magic. Was you
Yeah.
were already interested in UFO
Yeah.
subject or paranormal in general? Maybe with
Not so much ghosts ever. As a kid, my you know, I'd hear like these stories and stuff. You know, I grew up in Germany as well. Like I lived in Germany for a little while in a small town. So a lot of ghost stories and stuff. So as a
Mhm.
kid, but like as I grew older, I kind of just the whole ghost thing never really stuck with me for some reason. Maybe because I just feel like there could be a better explanation for it. Whereas with UFOs, a lot of times I just don't think there's a better explanation.
Yeah.
And that's what makes me more curious about it, I think.
Mhm. Yeah, and so so that was an interest in youth going
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
as
Always has been.
yeah.
But
Did you have
never anything serious. Just like kind of
yeah.
like, I was like, oh, I never commit to anything. So
Yeah. But now you've made a big with the area 51, you're not necessarily dealing with UFOs at this point.
yeah.
Is that
Mhm.
planned for the future?
It definitely is. There are stories that I want to cover. You know, I'm big on storytelling. I love telling stories through, you know, this medium that is YouTube and using the tools that we have today to be as creative as I can while still being informative and doing something I'm passionate about. So, you know, for me, a lot of the stories are where it's at. So whether it's
Yeah.
Benny and Barney Hill, you know, or I mean, any the Roswell incident, all these, or the Rendlesham Forest incident, all these are really fascinating stories I'd love to know more about. And hey, if I can go there and see it for myself, feet on the ground, and who knows what I might stumble across. Yeah, I
Mhm.
don't know, and probably nothing. But in the
Yeah.
event, I think it would be pretty cool.
Now,
There's a great there's a phrase in my head that I heard recently, which is recursive unsolvability, right? Which I guess I think it might have been from this recent Grush interview. Um,
Hmm.
but it's this, I was going to say, it's so fun watching you watch magic, you know, and hearing
Hmm.
what you're seeing. And, you know, and there is a real natural fit, it feels to me, from you seeing maybe what everyone else isn't seeing, or being a kind of, we talk a lot about pilots and trained observers, right? And there's just a certain, you know, training and observation that I think magic is, you know, it is naturally, is a sort of it's like,
Yeah.
how will this be observed? How do I observe? How do I see these tricks? Um, and so, because I'm reminded of Houdini, right, who went after mediums. But I know you're not going after this. I know you want to know, but there's a
Mhm.
cognitive dissonance, kind of like, you want to know, right, but you're really good at seeing the flash, whatever, you know, just seeing, you
Yeah.
know. So
well, yeah,
I find that,
a high level of awareness of artifice, I think would
yeah.
Right.
So
Um,
tell me how
be
you
an
look at
addition.
this stuff. You know, tell me how you look at the images that might be on Twitter or whatever. Like, how do you discern um, what you want to
I
follow and what's bullshit?
I don't think I look at it as critically as I probably should. I'm a fan of the anomalous, right? So I'm biased right off the bat. And if I see something that looks cool, um, you know, if you want to compare it to magic, I love knowing how tricks work.
Yeah,
But what I love more is, you know, not necessarily seeing how they work, but seeing how they work from the different angles and different perspectives, how the spectator sees it, how. And so I'm really fascinated with that exchange. Now, this for me, like seeing a UFO is akin to a magic trick I can't explain. So it bugs me, and it's like, oh, this, okay, well, there's no wires, there are no magnets, there are no, what are we left with? And that's, that's where I'm at. So then I start, searching in that direction and find all sorts of answers, which, we're all trying to get to the bottom of, but yeah.
Now it's fairly common that people that start taking UFOs or UAP seriously tend to start wandering into other areas of things that seem outlandish and unexplained or out of the norm. And
it's floodgates.
Now, was that kind of the path that got you into studying remote viewing?
I would say remote viewing I've heard about for a long time. I don't remember if it was an episode of Unsolved Mysteries. I think they did one, but there was might have been an old CBS program at one point that talked about like psychic spies, or had one on. It might have been Joe McMoneagle actually. And I remember thinking to myself like, oh, there are people out there who can do this, like as a young kid. So that kind of always stuck with me. So when I started scratching at the surface and noticing a lot of commonalities between the people who work in the UFO space are also kind of linked to the people who worked in, these spaces and all these other secret government organizations. And, so then finding out it was declassified, what was it, 2017? That's crazy that they just give that away. I was like, why isn't everyone looking at the CIA files? Like, why aren't we just all digging? I know there's 12 million pages, but I mean, let's do it. Right. Mm-hmm. And so, you start stumbling across these wild things. And that's where I just kind of got hooked. Cause I'm like, okay, they might not be so mutually exclusive. They might have commonalities,
Well, there's certainly the commonality of people being just convinced without really looking at any of the evidence that it's all bullshit.
Yeah.
Like that's just the common point. The standard point of view is remote viewing is bullshit. Mm-hmm. But most people who will tell you that haven't looked at any of certainly haven't done any of the research you did for Area 52.
Yeah.
Or looked at what Stanford has did with and what Stargate was doing.
The work Dr. May did, Dr. Edwin May, who was the director of physics, like the chief scientist for SRI for a period of time. He continued the studies on remote viewing long after and still to this day. But he's amassed, 30 years of data on 4 individuals. So it's 4 individuals who come in regularly to do remote viewings or remotely. Which is not too inconvenient for them, not surprisingly.
But
really,
they were way ahead of Zoom. Way ahead of Zoom.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm working from home today, guys.
Pretty much. And he did that for 30 years. So it's like he's got all this data, and then has a way of looking at the data as well. So he had to come up with his own, what was it called? A scientific oversight committee of 12 scientists, leading scientists and psychologists in the field. You had Dr. Schwartz, who was like nominated for inventing the particle beam. So all of these, the guy who did the Stanford prison experiment, he was involved. So you had 12 like the top scientists in the country, basically paid to be skeptical.
And what time frame are we talking about here?
I think this is early 70s, so 70, if I'm not mistaken, 72 or 73 for 20 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which was, that's a long time. And I know it's not a lot of money when you think about, $20 million, $1 million a year for the government. That's not that much money.
It was a lot more. It was more in the 70s.
Right. That's true. Yeah. That is true.
Yeah.
But they're buying pilot helmets now for $700,000. You know what I mean? So there's still like quite a bit of money going into the government. So it just didn't cost them much, but they were funding it for 20 years. So that's alone, should tell you something.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say, and one of the things you brought up in your that you're reporting
The
was that
debriefed, yes.
they had like 19 intelligence organizations
That's right. And
brought
17 of them
returned after getting results. So
up
that's a pretty good
to
return,
up
isn't
to
it?
505 individual missions.
Yeah.
So they return multiple times per mission. Like they were, was it I want to say was it the DIA? No, the Joint Task Force and the DIA both had like 140 plus missions. And, part of that was intercepting drug boats on the coast, with the Joint Task Force and telling them, hey, in 2 weeks' time, where can we intercept these people? And they came back because it worked, I guess, right?
Mm.
Like
That's so.
it's
that's
hard. It's
crazy. That's so crazy.
that's the other thing. It's like it's very difficult because in remote viewing, there are some things that are unverifiable in the government. Those cases are all classified still, although they declassified a lot of the studies. But those like 505 cases, 99% of them are classified.
Mm-hmm.
You won't know the results, and the viewer didn't know the results either. Most of the time, they were held blind to it entirely because they didn't want them to be affected in the remote viewing. So very rarely would they know.
I didn't realize that there was. There's a incredible book called Psychic Warrior. I don't know if you've David Morehouse was a. It's a very compelling read about a remote viewer for the CIA. Reportedly true story. He does a lot of seminars. It was a little disappointing because I was so into this book. I mean, I was like looking for the rights to this book. I was like, this is the fucking coolest story because they were coming after him. There was a lot of drama and sort of thriller aspects to this.
Wow.
He had worked in Afghanistan in a place called Baten El Ghul and it had been injured and then was in any event. When we ended up going to the seminar, it was a little like, okay, pay your money and then come for the weekend. And then I was like, oh, okay, I know I'm not going to, but it fascinated me. I didn't realize there was the future involved. I mean, I understood it was like, I'm going out psychic and I'm looking, but I didn't quite realize that there were future events involved. Tell me what in your mind is what's the case or cases that just resonate the most with you that seem to just defy any explanation as far as remote viewing goes, or what really like grips you, the stories that you've heard that are like, okay, I don't know what to say about this.
Yeah, there's a few. I read Ed Dames's book. I forget the name of it. The Major Ed Dames worked in the program, and then also Joseph McMoneagle put out Memoirs of a Psychic Spy, Project Stargate, which was a great read. And hearing their stories is, again, it's just, I hear these things and I'm constantly fighting. You can probably hear it in my voice. Like there's part of me that just wants to go all in on this. There's part of me that has to remain skeptical, because until you can give me everything you have on it, you know what I mean? I don't know where that leaves me, but the things that I've heard that have convinced me, or at least polarized me in that direction. There's a case with Joe McMoneagle where he had to find this agent. The department is classified, so he couldn't tell me the department who did this, but this agent hid in 3 different places, and they wanted him to find the agent. And the first place he hid in, and all of these are public, by the way. You can go get them in the CIA website, the archive. I've printed them out. He has perfect matches, 3 for 3, on the exact locations of these people, of this agent. One being in a field of, actually, do I have this here? Here we go. So here's actually one of them. This
nice access. Liking that.
Yeah, right. Very convenient.
It's right on my.
Who needs the internet?
Love it.
So here's one drawing he did depicting what this agent was working on, because he was asked to describe what he was working on afterwards. And if you have a look at like this, what is that? Like a horn-shaped thing, and there's his drawing right underneath.
Hold it up a little closer to camera.
Let me get the focus in. Here we go.
That helps.
So there's like a wavefront microwave emitter that he described. He even described the radius of it, or the whatever you call that, like the direction of it, with the angles, the degrees, and everything else. And he was dead on.
And we're
Mhm.
looking at a CIA file. Like, what's the
Uh,
source of?
this particular one is from his book, I believe, but these are available on the CIA website. These here, they will not show you this.
Right.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
these are from him.
I got you.
Right.
But they have the drawings.
Yes, you have the drawings, and then there was like windmills, wind turbines that this person was standing in. And Dr. May explained to me that it has a lot to do with entropy. Entropy is a big factor in the accuracy of remote viewing. The more entropic something is, the more they pick up on it.
Mhm.
It's almost like a moth to a light. And so when something's going through a lot of change, they've done rigorous tests where they've taken they take like dry ice somewhere, liquid nitrogen, and go to a location, just pour liquid nitrogen, and then they'll get better results from the remote viewers.
So the more disorder, the better.
Correct. I
As
think, and there's like a lot of theory on this, but
Yeah.
I think it has something to do with the fact that we are hardwired to see change.
Mhm.
So, for instance, if you listen to the same sound and have this red light glaring in your eye with some ping pong balls on, you're going to see black, and you're not going to hear anything after
Mhm.
an hour. You're going to fall
Yeah.
into like
Right.
a weird state of mind.
Yeah.
And
Or even
because
or
there's no
even
change.
nose blindness that people
Right.
you become incapable of sensing smells in your own home eventually.
Exactly.
You know.
Yeah. And
And which is-
so
which is
Teenage
why-
son, that's a big deal. That's important.
Yeah.
that's part of it is reacting to sort of and noticing changes. So if something is entropic in nature, it makes sense that we would pick up on that above anything else, if anything, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, they've done all sorts of tests. They've tested it in a submarine because there was a Russian in the 70s who wrote a paper on, he thought it was a frequency, and they're like, interesting work, let's measure it. They went into a submarine where no frequencies had any access, and we're still able to get very good results in remote viewing. So determined that it was not a frequency, in fact.
Mhm.
So
Do we know if this work continues in the government? I mean, I assume probably it does, but do we know? I mean, has your research led you to any conclusions on that?
I can say that I've heard it from a good source that it is. I cannot confirm any of that, but I have no reason to believe why it wouldn't. Like, for something that's cheap and easy to replicate and sort of at least, I mean, as a defense mechanism, which is why they use it in the first place, right? Was to defend against Russia. So I think at least that, like, it's not costing you much. You might as well do it, even if it's like 50-50,
Yeah.
Yeah, you're getting pretty good return on investment.
That's what I'm thinking.
If you're getting any results.
What a cool job.
Yeah.
Sign me up.
Well, that's the thing. I'm like, that's my next question, which is like, can anyone do it? Is there, what's the, are there any signs that you should look for in your background or in your, mental faculties that lean one way or another? I mean, what have you learned on that front?
They've tested. So when they tested initially, they tested 600 people, but it was a select number of people, including like Mensa members. So like geniuses and alumni and people from the Navy and all sorts of different people. And they found that 1% of those had above average or what they would quantify as like, yeah, you're like legitimately have psychic ability. That doesn't mean that you and I don't. It simply means that they might have it more. And it's kind of like, the three of us could try out for the NBA, but as hard as we work, and really, we could work like just devote everything to it for the rest of our lives. It's never going to happen. At this point, sorry to say, fellas, you're not going to the NBA.
Rule out Dave. I mean, he's a determined fellow.
He's still got the dream.
He's got the dream. Don't disappoint him.
Well, you yourself, prior to launching Area 52, you spent a year training to do remote viewing with your friend. You have your very old friend who had actually been
Nelson Dallas.
who had been sort of recruited for
Yeah.
a remote viewing project.
That's how I got interested in it. It was he was approached by someone on a Facebook group, a memory group. He's a memory champion, 5-time U.S. memory champ. And they wanted to see, this group wanted to see if they could teach him how to remote view. Maybe he would make for a better remote viewer due to his,
So interesting.
imaginary, or like he can imagine things, right? You have to picture things. But the problem with remote viewing too, that's the other thing, is that having innately good memory isn't good for remote viewing. Training memory is fine because that's something you have to like commit to remembering. But there are some people who just have like this crazy memory, and that is actually bad if it's natural, because you're getting overlays of imagination, and your neurons are connecting to other ideas and all this. So yeah, he got picked up, and he had some amazing results. Talked to me about it. I was already in, and then I started doing it with him through his training. And after a few sessions, I was like, yeah, oh, this is crazy. How is this accurate already? And I'm well aware of confirmation bias. And that's why I give myself a score on these things. I'm like, okay, maybe a 5 out of 10, which I think is, anything above 5
That's pretty
should
good.
be looked at. Right.
Yeah. What were you looking at? What were you training?
So the first ones were like, yeah, it was like that volcano one I got. And everything I wrote down, there wasn't one thing that wasn't really, I wrote sulfuric, sharp, echoing, rock, red cliff. I had all these mountain, so I had all the hot, I had all these adjectives that were dead on. And then I drew something, I don't know what the hell it was, but honestly, like, I could be like, okay, it's obviously not a penguin. It's some type of landscape. So I was like, okay, I was in the vicinity and I'm getting these things. And this could have been a bumblebee playing soccer. Like, you know what I mean? It could have been a billion things. So that's where I was like, okay, maybe there is something here. And then you keep trying to like prove yourself wrong. You keep doing it and you're like, no, this has got to turn bad sometime. And it does, but then you'll get 3 really good sessions in a row. And you're like, that's mathematically not,
So what are your plans with Debriefed? Are you going into the field? What's some of the stuff you're excited to do? What's your dream? You mentioned 1 or 2 cases at the beginning.
There is something that I'm looking into, that I've been looking into for the past like 6 months, which is pretty insane. Like somebody told me this once, that like the more you talk, the crazier you sound, right? Like the person who talks the most, it sounds the craziest, right? But I'm that guy. I'm always that guy. I'm like, no, listen to this one. I read a book called Journey of Souls by Michael Newton. He's a doctor and hypnotherapist. And he does, so it's a weird story, because he would do regression therapy for a lot of cases, just to get you, to find your trauma when you were younger. And then he had, people ask him, can you do past life stuff? Because there's people out there doing past life stuff. And he's never interested. He was a skeptic. He said, I don't want to, I don't do any of that woo-woo stuff. And then one person said, just please, my neck hurts. Maybe we can find the pain. Went back, long story short, he was apparently shot in the neck with an arrow or something. Anyways, the session ends. He's not hurting anymore, according to the guy. Mm-hmm. So the doctor, being a doctor, says, well...
Let's clarify. This was shot by an arrow in a past life.
In a past life. Yeah, not during the session.
Otherwise, it'd be pretty easy to notice.
Yeah, you don't have to be a doctor.
Yeah.
To figure that one out. Indeed, a past life, back before bullets. And so he said, you know what? If this actually did cure his pain, let's say his pain was psychosomatic or caused by his own brain, maybe then there's something to this where I go into a past life and fix people's problems. And if it works, it works, right? So he starts doing this stuff. He does a lot. And then eventually he asks a question, but he didn't phrase it correctly, I guess. And it led him somewhere else. And this is where everything really gets weird. He says, go to a place that makes you happy. Unbeknownst to Dr. Newton, that place was a spirit realm. He's in between lives. So he goes, interesting. Tell me more about this place. He does this and does over is it 7,000 cases over the years of LBLs, life between life, all over the world. And these people are reporting the same things, like specifically, like rooms they're in, and like they're mapping it out. So I'm enthralled in this book. I'm really, really sucked in because, as someone who loves fiction, I mean, this book is amazing. And if it's fact, then it's even more amazing. But at the end of it, because he goes through like 42 sessions or 44 sessions of different people, that's all the book is. It's just back and forth sessions. And at the end, I'm like, well, this has got to be total bullshit. I'm all over Reddit. Like, who's this guy? He's a fraud, right? Trying to figure it out. And I couldn't find anything. What I found were people on Reddit saying, I thought he was a fraud. So I went and booked my own session and filmed 6 hours of it and then wrote a book about it because it changed my life. And I'm like, wait, what? This is insane. So I can't find anything against this person. I then called the director of the Michael Newton Institute, Paul Anand, I think his name is, and spoke with him. He's done over 2,000 cases himself. And now we're sort of getting into the process of I'm going to, try and figure this out myself. And
Are these all LBL cases as you describe?
Yes.
Okay. So not reincarnation at this point per se, but
they get into it.
Slipping
so
between
you go
the cracks.
regression, reincarnation, and then they go LBL. That's kind of how it's like 3 sessions and then you're in.
Have you, look, we had this wild conversation with Paul Hynek, J. Allen Hynek's son, who was talking to us about DMT, and we've talked a lot about DMT and these very kind of ubiquitous entities that are met sort of during these experiences. And I was just curious, like a lot of these types of phenomenon seem to converge at various places with kind of inexplicably, but I'm wondering if have looked into any of that stuff at all, or if there's any similarity between these LBL experiences and what people report back from these DMT things where they're talking to their sort of angels or the elders or
yeah, there, I suppose you can make that connection. So in the book, the book, I believe is free on Audible. So if your listeners want it, it's
Journey of Souls, you said, right?
Fair warning, it'll fuck you up.
Yeah.
Like I gave this to my brother. My older brother's like, he's working a loader, and I'm like, he's like, give me something to listen to. I was like, you're not ready for this. And he's like, just let me. And he calls me back like 4 days later and goes, hey man, everything's different now. And I'm like, I know, it's kind of weird. So be prepared for that. But yes, there are spirit guides apparently, according to these LBLs. And those guides have guides and so on and so forth. And this is also echoed through ancient religion as well, which is really interesting. There's a lot of ties there. And there's ties, they answer everything. He kind of answers everything, which is really weird. You kind of get an answer for everything. The extraterrestrials, ghosts, everything. He goes into detail about it all kind of casually. It's quite alarming. So
what would you be able to tell us what some of the, what their answers are regarding extraterrestrials?
So I mean, in a nutshell, it'll do you better to listen to the book, but in a nutshell, we're basically so we have all these lives, these thousands of lives or whatever we have, or these hundreds of thousands of lives or whatever, and we get to pick where we go. We have free will in this place, and when we pick where we go, you're not jumping around to other planets. You go to one place, because he had a case, and he describes in the book, where somebody picked a different planet and was unhappy because they didn't have like facial features, and he missed like smiling, like his soul couldn't laugh, and like so he really didn't like it, so he went back to Earth. It sounds wild, but we have all these, apparently we have all these different planets to go to, and you can just pick and choose wherever you want to go, and that's where you're going. And some planets are harder to live on than others. Some of them are denser, like ours. Some of them are even more dense than ours. And then there's this one's emotionally hard to live through, mentally, physically, everything. So it's like an actual challenge. And the whole goal is to just learn lessons.
Mhm.
and you're taught these lessons between lives, and you're meant to sort of solve them during your life. And if you don't, you'll solve them in the next one. But there are signs and there are everything else that you know about prior. Yeah.
Well,
like I said, the
yeah.
more I talk about this, the
No,
wilder it sounds.
well, I know
I,
I kind
once
of
Dave
went
got me
through.
into this podcast shit, nothing shocks me. I'm fine.
Yeah,
Like it's, I've just begun to be that guy at the party that we've talked about,
yeah.
where I'm like, have I said too much? Where I just have to warn people in advance of like, oh yeah, I'm
Well,
doing a UAP podcast. I was like, how much do you want? Like, what do you want? You
yeah.
want like 10%? You want
What's
do you
your
want
level?
15%? Yeah, because shit's getting
It's
weird.
well, you go until you see the glassy-eyed stare.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
usually go way past. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Right.
That's it's interesting because I kind of had like a similar experience with reading Leslie Kane's book about surviving death.
Yeah,
And it's again we talk about this thing that once you sort of engage in the phenomena, then you get drawn into all these other areas. Um, and so reading Leslie Kane's book, which dealt a lot with reincarnation, near-death experiences, mediumship, and it was one thing as a lifelong atheist who believes we have no souls and that when the brain shuts down, that's it,
Yep.
forever.
Mhm.
Now I'm, maybe it's a product of just being 60 and not wanting that to be the truth, but
Sure.
it does seem like there's just too much evidence for something about consciousness that exists outside of our individual brain and
Yeah.
outside of our skulls, at least. So even if I still don't know, maybe it all shuts down when the brain finally does die entirely, but
Right.
I mean,
I don't have the answer. But apparently, these 7,000 people all shared the same answer,
yeah.
which that's the only thing that bugs me about everything. Because I've gone through an atheistic phase. I was brought up religious in a Catholic household, and then went to the other side. Now I'm kind of like I don't know where I'm at. I'm not someone who has faith, but I'm not someone who's atheist. I'm living in kind of limbo, and I'm just like, give me what you got.
Yeah, I think I'm still an atheist, but I'm not so much of a materialist reductionist, I guess,
Sure. Yep.
as I was. That I now think there are aspects of reality that lie outside of the physical.
Yeah.
And that was not a realization that I embraced. I rejected it most of my life. So
did the transdimensional craft and the talk of these transdimensional beings like that Grush mentioned, everything else, did that sort of help you think that way, where you're like, oh, okay, there's possibly other dimensions that we're dealing with?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is, even with dimensions, even if we're talking about higher dimensions, you can still fit that into a materialist view of the universe.
Sure.
That these dimensions are just dimensions that we're not aware of or capable of perceiving, but they could still be just simply physical realities.
Sure.
And I think, I guess for me, it's more whether maybe it's the DMT experiences that people describe, or just the interactions with consciousness that people have when they're dealing with UAP. So all of that just sort of made me think, well, all right, there are realms of reality that aren't contained in our bodies and brains.
Yeah. And I'm sure everything is explainable. Even the most, spiritualistic, go to the far ends of whatever religion, I'm sure everything is still explainable scientifically, maybe not just yet. But I believe we'll get there in 1,000 years or whatever it'll take. But, there's got to be things that we just will never comprehend. That's a scary thought to think about. But I tell myself, like, okay, I believe that there was no beginning or end to the universe. I don't believe that there's a beginning because before the Big Bang, what is there? You can't say nothing, something. So there has to be something. And so in my head, I just believe that there's no beginning. And when your head tries to wrap around that idea of, oh, it never started, like you glitch out for a second, you're like, wait. And I think that tells me that there are things that my brain literally can't understand. I'm trying to understand this idea of there is no beginning, and I just can't wrap my head around it. I know that there are things that I don't get.
And even when I hear physicists talk, and generally I love hearing physicists talk, and I'm usually completely lost within a few minutes. But
Yeah.
you hear people talking about how basically there is beyond the Big Bang, beyond that point of the Big Bang, that there is essentially a reverse light cone that was a previous state of the universe. So that, yeah, even they are saying there's maybe no beginning to the
Right.
universe, that it's kind of I guess a recurring event.
Yeah.
Universes seem to have almost a wavelength to them.
And it's just impossible to even imagine. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
you can only put it down in numbers for it to make sense. Like,
yeah,
that's the only
Yeah,
thing you can do.
it's a theory that's like kind of sounds good, but I think, Chris, to your point, honestly, it just doesn't. There's no sense to it. Like nothing. How does
No.
nothing, exist? Nothing is still something, and we're dealing
Yeah.
with a universe that's 95% something we can't see or detect or feel or
Yeah.
hear. And I find and dark mass, but dark matter, but dark energy too. I mean, there is so much invisible to us that has density, or that has gravity, at least, that is impacting the shape of galaxies. So, and we have no concept of how to access it. And I think you mentioned Grush, and my personal kind of spiritual ontological shock is going from a kind of vaguely spiritual, vaguely religious kind of, sort of comforted when I need to sort of hope
Right.
and imagine there's something else out there, to through these wonderful conversations starting to go like, shit, man, it might be way more crowded than I'm prepared to even contemplate. And what our minds can't wrap around is this idea of proximity and
Mm.
total invisibility of something that might be multi-species, multi-dimensional. That idea seems to have the most traction for me, and it seems to be the one that has kind of overtaken extraterrestrial, which is
Mm.
now kind of seems like a clumsy mode of travel, or some, like, really they're going to come all the way to this small corner of the universe, whereas it just could be all happening around us, and the idea that we can't
Sure.
perceive it is both thrilling, terrifying, and where so many of these kind of arrows all meet, whether it's the LBLs that you described, or the stuff that the DMT experiences, and and even the UAP phenomenon
And the
seems to be
remote
speaking
viewing.
to the remote viewing
Yeah.
as well. It's like, it's
yeah,
just, they're starting
Yeah.
to we're just starting to feel the kind of grooves and contours of something else that we are just trying, that some of us can see, we experience here and there, but like gradually this disparate phenomenon seems to be converging at. And before I forget, this is the book that also is like, you can share with your brother, I guess, which is alien. What is it? It's Alien Information Theory, um, which was
Nice.
which is Andrew Gallimore, Psychedelic Drug Technologies and the Cosmic Game. And this will definitely blow your mind. It gets a little numbersy, but
Mm.
it just starts with ones and zeros in our brain and takes you all the way through the DMT experiences that people describe. And it really is intense,
yeah.
and makes you makes you ponder all this stuff. Tell me your kind of David Grush, the hearings. What did you make of it? What did you think? Uh,
Um, I thought it was a really cool moment in history. Um, for people who cared, I thought it was really for people who didn't care, really didn't matter to them, even to this day, as wild as that is. But there are people who cared, and to those people like myself, it really mattered, and I thought that was great. And so I hope, through this process, most people don't understand, even after seeing the news of like a whistleblower, don't understand that he's the first whistleblower. Like, it's the first of many. It's there's going to be more, and so it makes me hopeful. Uh, but at the same time, like, I struggle. I try to play devil's advocate for everything, and if I was in a position like if someone came up to you and said, you work for these people, you're doing these things or you're seeing these craft and we're retrieving them and all this. And, they flat out told you, yeah, we're going to kill your family if you say anything. Like, like let's say someone told you that. I wouldn't say a word. I'm sorry. I'll take it to my grave. Right. And so for someone to go through the steps, knowing that, you know what I mean? And playing that game is like, wow, you're really you might be taking a bullet. You know what I mean? Like you're actually this martyr, like almost like right now, where in this, because what he's saying is very serious. There's, harm come to people and potentially to himself. And that is, if you told me that, I'd be like, okay, yeah, I'm not going to say anything ever.
Yeah. Well, definitely there's a history of people becoming oddly clumsy near open windows.
Right. Yeah.
Who have come forward, who have tried to talk about the,
it was a suicide to the back of the head. You're like, well,
yeah. And, or conveniently timed heart attacks and things like that. So, there's definitely reason to be fearful, I think, on Grush's part. Definitely.
Yeah. If what he's saying is true, absolutely, you need to be fearful.
Yeah.
Right? And that who made this point? I think, was it Cuomo made this point once? Or I don't know who made this point, but it was so good. He said, well, either he's telling the truth and this is so serious, or he's lying and you have a crazy person working for the government. And that's also serious.
Yeah.
Well, I think even Marco Rubio said that.
It was Marco Rubio.
We have this problem. We have that all of these people in really important positions within our government,
they're insane.
They're insane, and we should probably have some sort of a mechanism for.
And I also agree with that. People. If please make sure they're not insane, and if they are, please, yes, let's also deal with that. But
the idea, but ignoring the whole issue.
That's wild.
Makes no sense. Like that is, the thing that always gets me is the fact that and I hate using it again. I hate using the term mainstream media because it, makes me feel creepy. But the fact that mainstream media can't even pick up on that angle, that either that one of these realities is going on.
Yeah.
Either something really crazy is actually happening, or a lot of really crazy people are in really important jobs.
Right. And he's still active, if I'm not mistaken, isn't he?
Grush? No, he's retired.
No? Oh, he's retired now?
He is. He retired shortly before, I guess just a few months before he did the Ross Colt
before last year, right?
Before the debrief article came out.
Oh.
Yeah, he retired so that he could, I guess, pursue it as a private citizen.
Yeah, because you don't want to go into work Monday morning after something like that.
It's awkward. That's awkward.
Yeah, so water cooler talk's going to be weird.
Yeah.
Sorry about the aliens.
Yeah, people being weird. Yeah, should have opened my mouth. I think of this again, and I think Jesse Michaels is the guy that interviewed Grush in this new kind of. At first glance,
I haven't watched that yet.
Yeah, I have to say, I was a little worried because I didn't think the optics were great. And that sounds so it's lame, I know, but I don't know. He's like hanging out in his cargo shorts, talking to this person. I wasn't super. I guess maybe it's a generational thing. I was like, maybe his next thing be on 60 Minutes or something? Like, I didn't know why he's like hiking with now, this was just my first impression, and it was just off of seeing it. In fact, I was like worried. I was like, we did this podcast defending him from these assholes who wrote that article saying that because he had PTSD, he couldn't be trusted. I was like, fuck you. I don't care what he said, but I was just like, fuck you. So, but I also want to believe that what he is saying is true. And I obviously it's very hard to know. I did end up watching it just because I felt I had a duty to, because we've been talking about it so much, and I'm curious. And I have to say, it's, he still comes across as very, lucid and compelling, and it is, and it was consistent. It was clear, consistent, and it was clearly a long-term project with a person that he knew, who was sort of a friend of his that had gone for a year or more. So there was a little bit more prep around it. I think it was just the initial impression was like, okay, are we getting too glib about this? Like, what? Like, doesn't this?
I hear you.
Doesn't this require slacks at least? Just wear I turned into my mom. You know, I'm like, what? Like, put something on that that makes this look more serious. but
I like getting more of a sense of his personality and who he is.
yeah.
As you know, and also I thought Jesse, is it Michaels? Michaels? How does he
Mick
pronounce
could be. It's
it? I don't know.
spelled more Mickles than Michaels, but I figured Michaels was a safer bet.
Yeah, well, he mispronounced Coulthardt's name, so we don't have to worry too much. But that I also like that he edited in a lot of history about the subject.
Big time.
That kind of that
that's great.
undergirds the
I gotta
stories
watch it.
that Grush is telling. Going
But
all
like,
the way.
but also, what's on the cutting room floor? Like, that's what I want. Like, what happened after he got a few beers in him, or is he's sober
Yeah.
now? Actually,
I
yeah,
know.
He's
He's
probably
knows?
sober now.
But
He
he's
doesn't.
he may not be sober, but he sure is. I'm sure he's very careful. He seems like in this interview, he's still very careful to not cross the lines that were.
That's why they're out hiking on a mountain, probably, and stuff. Because like,
it is a curious
a
environment.
guy like that's got to be bugged. You gotta you gotta. As soon as you do that, like, is that you start hearing clicks in your phone? Like, what's the? Start finding these things laying around.
I can't imagine that existence. Yeah, I can't imagine the weird pressure. I am sure, to do his kind of work, you need to be a unique personality to begin with. He is very much he's like this data machine.
Yeah.
I mean,
he's so bright, by the way. Everything he says he's so concise and meticulous with the structuring of his sentences. Like in court, he had just I don't know if it was court, Congress.
Yeah.
Congress. Yeah.
But he had just the most composed demeanor, and he hit things like an assassin. He was like, oh, this is this, bop, 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 and dropping every project, letter name, and all these, crazy facts that he had to pull together in such a high pressure environment. You can tell this guy's dealt with a lot. Like, this is piece of cake. The stuff he's dealt with on or off the UFO subject, like, is a lot more than any of us can handle. Like, he's a very smart person.
And in that setting, he's dealing with one slip that violates his DOPSA pre-approval, and he's jail. Yeah. And one slip in terms of testifying to Congress, and he's looking at a perjury charge. So it's like there's so many ways he can end his liberty in that setting, and so it's definitely a lot of people that sort of criticized him after that. It's like, I don't think they're realizing the kind of pressure he's under.
Definitely. And then bringing up his medical stuff, which is total bullshit. That's all wild. Are you guys familiar with Gary McKinnon?
No.
Sounds familiar, but
guy.
Who's Gary McKinnon?
He was kind of like a Snowden. He the biggest hack in the government ever.
Oh, this is the British hack? Yes, I have heard about it. Yeah, but go on.
He hacked NASA. Because he wanted to know about UFOs. That was his whole reason for hacking NASA. It wasn't anything. He's like, I wanted to know what they were hiding. And when he hacked in, there's several things he saw. One was this whole section of photos from satellites and there's just UFOs everywhere that people had to scrub out. So there's a whole section that they have to scrub out before putting it online or whatever. And so he took a screenshot of that. And then the second thing he did, he opened this Excel folder that said non-terrestrial officers. And it had names of officers and their rank and their number and everything down this list. But then he looked for the officers, couldn't find them, couldn't people search them. They're non-existent. But there were ranks of officers and what appeared to be ship names, OSS or whatever. So it was non-terrestrial officers. I think he mentioned as well something about this Galactic Federation, and then I heard the same thing from I don't want to butcher his name, but there was the guy in the head of the Israeli
Eshed. Right?
Eshed, yes,
the general who basically ran the Israeli space program for 20 years.
Exactly. He was like their Werner von Braun of Israel.
Yeah, but
less bad analogy, but
less Nazi-like.
less probably the worst analogy I can make.
Slightly less anti-Semitic than Werner von Braun.
Yeah, exactly. But in terms of what he did, he put up 13 satellites, through his career. That guy, not Gary McKinnon. But both of them spoke about this Galactic Federation, and then they
Mhm.
remote viewed it as well. There's a transcript, I have it, of remote viewing. The government asked the remote viewers to remote view
The
Galactic
Galactic.
Federation
Oh wow. And
verbatim.
and
Yeah,
and again, there's one of those things we talk sometimes about where do you draw the line. I know that's one of those lines I haven't been able to bring myself to cross yet.
dude,
I know. I was about to
I'm such a
say.
fan of like Star Wars and Star Trek, though. I'm
Me
like,
too.
this has to be true.
I know, but it's hard for me to cross that line that
Yeah.
the Galactic Federation, just because it sounds like such a human construct that
I
it
love to see it.
exists.
It's
I-
becoming
but-
so arbitrary, right? Like these lines that
Yeah.
we're drawing, you know, I'm just doing it from my last little cliff hold, like the little tiny branch on the thing where I'm just like looking down and I'm like, okay, I'm not doing Galactic Federation. I've done abduction. I've done, I do.
I go there, but then I come back and I'm
Yeah.
like, okay,
It's
like,
a tide.
is-
It's a tide
what's
that
the
comes in and
difference?
comes out.
Yeah.
I know because, for example, like I was having this sort of grush anxiety, honestly, before I was even looking at this new interview. I was like, oh god, like I was like, oh, it's all. And then there was this really interesting article from The Hill. Dave, I don't even know if you may have even linked it to me. I'm not sure, but it was about the orb in the O of Arrow on its website. And it started
Right.
to deconstruct the metallic orb and its history. And it went back through all of these official, just military reports, just military people, just pilots, just everything that's findable. And it was a
Yeah.
really, really good article.
Going back to pre-World War
Going back
II.
to the Foo Fighters and going back to these, you know, whatever they called them,
Yeah.
what was the term they used for and before the Tic Tac? But anyway, let's just keep it to metal orb, which is ubiquitous around the world. They are seeing it everywhere. These military people saw it everywhere,
Well,
and it's
yeah.
there. And it's really even Arrow, which has taken a lot of probably deserved hits for them, kind of just sitting in the background, like
for not doing
we know
for
what's
not doing
going on.
anything with everyone's money.
They're just like
Kirkpatrick. That's the weird thing, and the Kirsten Gillibrand hearing, which was pretty disappointing. But even in that, the most disappointing thing to me was that Kirkpatrick actually shows a video of one of these orbs flying clearly in a way that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
At speeds that don't make any sense.
Yeah.
And no one
don't
asked him a
fly.
question. And nobody asked him a question. Like Gillibrand, nobody asked him a question. The press didn't follow up. And he said, this is an example of something that we find unexplainable.
Nice.
No further conversation.
Yeah.
it's everywhere, and it was one of these sort of it was almost reassuring to me
It's got
that
to be a probe.
it persists. And they talked about like one theory is the mothership theory, that they're just firing these things out. They're looking around and there's some, you know, big mothership. Even Arrow's website suggests that's what's going on. So I have to say they're playing ball a little bit with that. And then even in the new Grush thing, which is worth checking out, this Jesse Michaels or Michaels, he does a decent job of putting some stuff together. And he just he didn't reframe it. He just kind of reiterated the ubiquity of these UAP around the nuclear test sites, and just hundreds of radar operators who are so disincentivized to say shit, who are the most like pilots or magicians. Radar operators at a nuclear test site need to have like a kind of mental construction that is unassailable. They're not gonna freak out. They're not gonna say something that did happen, that didn't happen, or what. Like they're on the button. They're gonna press the button. You gotta trust these fucking people. And hundreds of them have testified, you know, have been interviewed and said that like all around, like you see a map of just every sort of nuclear site that was visited had issues.
They talk about that stuff in old magazines, like from like the 70s and stuff. I got these ones from those
are awesome. Look at those. Those are great.
Yeah.
Before the lunar landing, they're talking about the lunar landing, what it's going to be like on the moon and stuff. You know, so but you have people talking about all of this stuff. Everything that you've seen on video is like in old magazines.
Yeah.
They're all there. All the stuff, all the abduction cases, all the like the whole townsfolk getting together and all seeing the same thing, like
Yeah.
these mass sightings that we heard about, in South Africa and, other, I think Australia, those have happened dozens of times, just
Mm.
not on video. And those stories are out there. And,
And and the weird thing is the existence of those stories is used as a form of debunking.
yeah,
Like, it's used as, like, people will say, "Well, Grush is just the latest person telling us these stories we've been hearing for decades and decades," as opposed to going, "Oh, this
why are they
guy's
telling us stories
yeah,
for
why would we keep
decades?
hearing these stories?" And, it's like that old thing where people keep saying, "Well, there's no way this could be kept a secret." Well, you've got the magazines. It hasn't been kept a secret, but
It's constantly been out there.
yeah.
It's funny. We had a conversation pre-podcast with Gary Nolan, and I don't think I'm out of my. I don't think it's violating anything about that conversation. He was talking about the waves that this kind of, the waves come in, and there's suddenly a lot of interest, and the waves kind of roll out.
I think like anything else.
He equated it. He equated it also to the materials that they're keeping, where whether it's Lockheed Martin or what, that the materials would sort of roll out, and a bunch of scientists would sort of jump in, try to figure it out. Nobody would figure it out, and they'd just roll it back into the garage, and that there were these sort of waves of kind of interest and attempts, and they would kind of bang on it, look at it, study it, whatever, and then put it back in the garage until there came someone was going to take another shot at it, which it made sense. And I don't know if it would correlate to the kind of, what we've seen, like interest peaks, interest goes back,
Sure.
interest peaks, and we're certainly in a peak. And go ahead.
I think if anything, like I do believe that we have craft. Like I just feel that way. I've always felt that way when you listen to Grush, and there's so many other people who've also said they've worked on craft throughout the years that have worked at NASA, Area 51, all these places. So I do believe that we have achieved craft, whether it's through archaeological digs, like Bob Lazar said, or otherwise. But I also think that it's like throwing a Tesla back in the 1500s with 40% battery. They're not going to figure out how it works. They have no idea.
Yeah.
It is alien to them. It is magic. It is,
And they would also have mixed feelings about Elon Musk.
yeah, sure. He might fit right in it.
Yeah.
No, yeah. So like, but they'd figure out how to drive it, right?
Yeah,
So,
driving.
and then
yeah.
they'd retrofit it. And I think that's what we're doing. I think we've got a limited fuel source. I think we're
Mhm.
retrofitting these things. And for personal gain, perhaps, you look at stories of that guy who apparently caught some unmarked government officials smuggling weapons into a UFO in Peru. You guys hear about this story? It was
No.
this is
There's
a
some
while
funky shit going on in Peru. I'm not going to lie.
This
Yeah.
is recently.
Well, we heard is this related to the supposed illegal gold mining story?
No, this is so are you familiar with Stephen Greer?
Yeah.
So I don't know how I feel about that guy, but he
Yeah, I
brought
agree.
a bunch of people on to testify, ex-military, and people working Air Force and all this stuff to just testify. This was this year. And several people went up and they said what they did and everything else. And this guy, he's a Marine through and through. You like, hoorah! This guy's like, yeah, you see him. He know all the lingo, everything. He's like, we were here 1,600 hours, boom. But he's given all these terms, the helicopter, the helos over here, all this stuff. And then they encountered. They were there for a rescue mission or just like to help a humanitarian mission. And they wandered off, these 6 guys, and they see this thing in the woods, and they're like, what is that? Like over the jungle, just hovering, this giant octagonal dark disc. And so they walk down and see it, and now they're seeing this thing floating, and they're seeing containers of guns, everything being loaded up, and these guys who are unmarked, better weapons than the Marines, better everything. He could recognize all the weapons of the vehicles. He knew that they were better geared than they were, but no patches, no names, and they all spoke in American accents. Baseball caps and everything. Turned around, safety's off, him and his guys with their hands up, and they're like, we're gonna kill you. They ended up just unloading all their weapons. They knew exactly where their ID was, took his ID, all this stuff, sent them on their way. They had to sign NDAs. They had all their stuff taken from them, all their phones back then. And this one guy 14 years later decided to come out and talk about it. And he said the whole story. And he's like, that's what happened. That's what I saw. And he emailed the 5 other guys. Only one of them responded with, and he showed the email, and it was like, don't ever fucking contact me about this shit again. It's not worth it. Not worth my career. Not worth my family. Nothing. He's like, drop it. Please don't ever talk to me about this again. That was like the end of the email. And so and this guy's shaken up visibly, like by this event. You see him. He's like trembling in his voice. So are they retrofitting these things? Are they using them? Like if you're government, you have to, if you can fly them, right? What are you doing with them? You got to be.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's kind of goes back to Bob Lazar's account, which was, he said the same thing, that he said that they take these things out every 10 years, try to figure them out, fail, and put them away again, and hope the science advances. But he also said that they were able to fly these things at Area 51. So
he apparently took people to see them, right? To see them fly the UFO around. Bigelow, I think, was supposedly somebody.
On 3 different occasions and filmed it.
Yeah. So maybe that's I think we haven't reversed, and my guess is we haven't reversed engineered them enough to be able to build them.
That's my guess.
But to maybe be able to, in a very limited way, use them.
Yeah.
But again, one of the things I resist is even a shed story that we have a subterranean Martian base that that is manned, I guess, if you can use that term, by both humans and aliens.
I mean, that's the thing. Like that's the floodgate thing again. Yeah. It's like, hey, we got UFOs. Where did they come from? It's another civilization. Did they colonize our moon or Mars or whatever it is? Like, once you believe in one, you're like, everything else isn't so far-fetched, but you got to come with that concrete evidence on the first thing.
Yeah.
Like, show me a UFO. Yeah. Show me the crash. Show me everything. Show me the bodies. Show me the pilots. Yeah. Now you want to talk about Galactic Federation. You want to talk about bases on Mars. I'm all ears, and I would believe you.
Yeah, well, there's no logical argument to dismiss it out of hand once you've accepted the idea that UAP are in our atmosphere. Once you accept that there are craft that are capable of doing the things that have been observed by military.
Who's piloting them? That's what
it's funny. I think about like we had a friend of mine on, a woman named Jean Anzulis, who's one of my dear friends for 30 years, and she. When I was 19, I first heard her abduction experience, and it just, completely blew my mind, changed my worldview, because she was such a kind of reliable narrator, like one of these people that is just so, you're really close with it. And her story is remarkable. And I think about like the logic of the sort of, I think, Dave, to your point, like a human construction of like the president shaking hands with like the big tall alien versus the absolute nonsensical behavior of abduction experiences, like the clear, I don't know how to say it. It's just there's interpreting its motives in like trying to figure out what it wants or desires or how it thinks. It seems so alien. It just seems so impossible for us to appreciate because and so I guess that's why I kind of get. That's where I sort of fall off, because I feel like if there's some interdimensional, if we are just the fish underwater and we don't know what sails are and cars are and we don't know what anything is beyond the water's surface, like how can you even begin to appreciate their kind of needs or motivations? So I guess that's why part of me gronks on the idea of something organized to this. I think there's probably just a flailing ignorance of what these things are.
That would probably make the most sense, but then again,
but yeah, no, I just, that's to me one of the scary aspects of it is the idea that the president's speech right now, if it was true and we had the ship, would be like yeah, they're flying around, we don't have any idea.
But I mean, that's something. See, like that's even where I was like, do I even believe that now? I'm that guy. I'm that guy. If you gave me aliens, I'm like, all right, why are you giving them to me now, though? I'm like, give me the aliens. You're like, here you are. You're like, I was.
Yeah. Why'd they do that? I know.
Yeah, that's me. That's me. Like, if Biden right now said there's aliens, I'd be like, no, there isn't aliens now. These crafts are manned by government. Like, I 100% would be there, because it's like, there's never. I often ask myself this, like, what's the thing, right? What is that thing that'll make me I'm all in?
Mm-hmm.
Because you can fake anything, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I could hypnotize you, make you believe anything, right? I like that's a possibility. You can drug someone. You can spend millions, hundreds of millions of dollars on elaborate prank or a hoax. Who do we believe?
Well,
Right? Even if it's out, like the only thing, even if we see it, are we going to believe that this is alien? Are we going to believe what they're telling us? Like, and so I think the only, I don't even know what my thing is, but I think it's something we all, like a journey we all go through. And I don't think we're ever going to get to the end of it for forever, because I think even if we're going to be given something, it's going to be something else that we're not understanding, or
Yeah.
it's just, but it's a forever sort of approach to it. Like, give me more. I crave
Yeah.
more, but
Well, I
we're
feel like
not quite hitting it.
I feel like there is the real possibility that all we can hope to get is some kind of a dumbed down version of reality that is
That's right.
presented to us that we can wrap our human heads around,
Digest. Yeah.
and that is
exactly.
going to, and that might even be that maybe that is why there's a galactic federation, because
Perhaps.
whatever this phenomena is saying, well, here's a stupid way of explaining it to you.
That's right. Yeah. Might be a psyop, and a lot of it'll appease a lot of people.
Yeah. But I'm saying it may be whatever the alien force is, that maybe they are just, maybe it will present in a way that we can
understand it,
that we can put into a human frame of reference.
That's true.
And it might be as far from the reality as as the fact that I can hammer on my desk is from the reality of quantum physics. That I can believe my desk is solid, even though I know for a fact it isn't.
Yeah, there's a chance that your hand will go through the desk. You know that, right?
There's mathematical probability.
Yeah, it's very
Yeah.
small number, but
I know
think there's a holistic sort of ground. So I agree the top-down explanation is probably not going to happen, because I don't think they know shit, and I think we're scared to say anything, and I don't know what that speechwriter writes. I guess in my head I'm like, okay, what do I say again? Like, how do we reassure? And so I believe that this kind of academic science community, people talking about it, people beginning to sort of accept, whether it's the Avi Loeb, it feels like NASA is now kind of just poking this thing repeatedly, not just from the UAP thing, but also they just found, was it a moon? Was it one of Jupiter's moons? They found really a chemical, it was just announced. It's called DSP. It's a kind of chemical makeup of the atmosphere that virtually guarantees that life is there. Probably not complicated life, but it's definitely.
I know they just found that on an exoplanet as well.
Yeah, I think this is what. So there's this kind of gathering, and I don't think it's organized. I don't think it's necessarily conspiratorial. I don't think it's like, okay, you do this, because I just think ultimately conspiracies are. I don't think the world's that organized. Personally, I just feel like you look at government, you're like, they're barely catching up to what just happened. Like,
all in on it. Everyone.
No, I just think it's
no one's just against this at all.
Exactly.
Not one person. Okay.
But I think the Avi Loeb stuff, Gary Nolan, like getting people to start to get others and peers and academic peers to just go like, just fucking look, just don't do your immediate thing. Just look at the, ubiquity of all of these experiences, that just sheer volume of now cases and stories. So just to get to the point of like something's happening, and then obviously it's beyond us. I somewhat separately, I find it interesting about Grush, for example, like he's not saying like, I've seen the bodies, they're in a big test tube, I've been in the garages. He's kind of just reporting what he's heard, which in a strange way, not to say he hasn't seen anything himself. Apparently he's seen some files. He's talked directly to pilots who have experienced, but there's something, believable about that for some, and somehow like he's not
That
going.
he's not embellishing.
He's
He's
not
not.
doesn't seem to be embellishing or going out of his way to try to convince
Well,
us. Like, hey, I've seen the Roswell craft, and
I think the funny thing to me is though is that like it seems like the people who know, right, like firsthand, don't want anyone else to know, and
yeah,
that's always bugged me because no answer would like ever suffice. Like why?
yeah,
Why don't you want me to know? And so the more I think about it, the more I think the answer might not be something we like. I think that would
yeah.
make the most sense to me.
I think that's
Because everybody who doesn't have their hands in it wants to whistleblow.
yeah,
But everybody who has their hands in it unanimously is like, this, we shouldn't know this because there is something that possibly we won't like.
yeah. Well, I know, like
whatever that is.
I know that's our friend Jeremy Corbell has intimated that he's been hearing, that maybe there's something to this that we don't want to know, and maybe we,
we're getting farmed. They're farming us or something, or we're getting. The one thing I would say, not counter to that, but sort of parallel to that, is that I don't know, my experience in business or whatever is like people withhold information just as a power move. Like it's just power, like information is sort of like I know and you don't, and that's just like a human instinct of like I'm going to hold. Keep
there's
this.
a
It's
dopamine
mine.
rush that comes from exclusivity.
Yeah,
that is true.
It's like
it's true.
It's why racism works so well.
Yeah.
Empowering,
people having the secret is such, and
the secret sauce.
This particular secret,
it's power.
Yeah, it's power.
And
I don't rule
there
out
is that argument of like, don't show your hand, obviously. But I think at this point now, what really like made me think about this particular theory again was like, why isn't any other country right now? I know, was it Mexico actually just had a hearing
today?
They're about to, or is it today?
Is it
today? I think it was I think 4 o'clock West Coast time.
Yeah, but like Russia hasn't said a peep, and
well, they did. They used to,
but I mean, like I'm saying now, like where's all the?
I mean, George Knapp came back with thousands and thousands of pages of formerly classified Russian documents and interviews with then Soviet officials.
But now it's like, shouldn't they come clean out? Like, especially like if you're invading another country, maybe you'll want to let people know you got UFOs or something. Like, I'm just saying, like he seemed like he was in a pickle for a second. Wouldn't that be a perfect time to be like, we have crafts. Also, just put your guns down, right? Like,
but it's a revelation of impotence when you do it, though, is the problem. The same thing with the American military. A big part of what I keep hearing from, why the military doesn't want to admit things are real is because they are impotent to do anything about it.
Right. Yeah.
They can't, it's like what David Fravor and Ryan Graves testified to. It's the military doesn't like to say, "Oh yeah, there's this stuff in our skies. It's way better than anything we have."
Not a good look.
And if it wants to get you, it's gonna get you. So good night, everybody.
Yeah, no way America's saying we're not number one.
Yeah,
yeah,
and that's the whole thing.
And we do have like other countries that have been much more forthcoming about
France.
UFOs.
France is way out.
France,
there.
France, even Brazil.
True.
Although they've I guess they go through waves depending on their governments. Chile has been pretty open. They've put out videos and talked about it. Mexico has been relatively open about UFOs.
Canada kind of backed off the subject a little bit.
Canada's kind of the worst right now.
Yeah, it's really not great.
You got to step it up, guys.
We had like the whole that letter that the MP sent, which named this organization called Five Eyes, or I was like, who's this? What did?
And saying that that we should come clean on our involvement with reverse engineering. And then then we still have the Canadian Minister of Defense still saying Canada does not research our military, our Air Force. None of our departments are are looking at UFOs at all. And
But like you said, ultimately, maybe there's nothing we can do about it. So there's no point in really divulging anything, because that just shows how weak we are and how powerless we might be against these things.
yeah, but then there's also, I mean, I know you keep hearing about the story that in 4 years there's something's coming.
2027.
Yeah, yeah, that something is coming.
Lou Elizondo said, just find a hobby for the next few
Yeah.
years.
Yeah,
I was like,
and
I like that. I like that. That's
yeah,
fun.
but that's what's behind Gillibrand's legislation, Chuck Schumer's legislation. It's behind the creation of all of these organizations for transparency. Is that basically there's something coming in 4 years that they're not going to be able to stop, so they got to get us prepped a little bit.
Nice.
What the fuck?
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hate that shit.
Yeah, that's
Now, I have lived through now. I've lived through
This
several.
also
of
sounds
these.
like, this sounds like Y2K.
Yeah, I've lived through several of these at this point. 2012, 2000 was a bad one.
Yeah.
You know, I've been through a few, so I'll be prepped. Some crazy shit just went down in 2020, so I'm not. You know, I think we're kind of
like every winter solstice we're in for some type of Armageddon.
bring the bring the aliens on. Well, you know, I'll be happy. How much can we? You know, we'll need some new content. That'll be fantastic. It'll be fantastic for Area 52. It'll be fantastic for really.
We'll have been on the ground level at that point.
I hope. That's the only reason I'm doing this is to hopefully, I'll find someone who knows where the secret apartments are that I can like take my family and we can make friends with the aliens. Someone in the know will help us out.
Yeah.
That's my whole motivation here. I'll get some sort of insight.
Of course, the other side of that is that we may just suddenly one morning wake up to find that all of us and all of our curiosity are completely irrelevant because the non-human intelligence have just said, hey, and here we are. Yeah. And so all of so not just us, but like all of our
but they say it in our heads.
Yeah.
And in our own voices.
Yeah.
So, it'll be some type of medium that we didn't expect. It won't be a handshake on a hill with a UFO. It'll be like in your bedroom and all at the same time, like, hey, we're here, or something wild, right?
Yeah, well, I think our own history, we're not many decades away from being a species that interacts with the internet purely on a mental level.
Sure. We're close to that too.
Like our interface with, I mean, I remember the first time I heard about cochlear implants.
Yeah.
I thought, as soon as I heard about those, I thought, that's the future of how we interconnect. We will communicate through something like a cochlear implant someday.
Yeah.
And
Neuralink or whatever it may be.
So we'll access the internet in exactly the same way we currently think.
There is someone who does that, actually. There is someone who has the internet hooked up to his brain. He did a whole interview and they're like, yeah, what's this times this? And he's like, he doesn't even have to say it. He just thinks it, and it goes, Google searches everything.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's Elon's theory that's the only way we can possibly keep up with the AI anyway. It's just we got to like put something in there so that we can at least maybe play in the same ballpark as AI so that we don't appear to just be sort of these silly kind of
I think if
animals running around, you know, that have no purpose.
Yeah. I think AI exists already. I don't think we invented it. If you're looking at these crafts and thinking that they're more advanced, then you can just assume that they've conquered artificial intelligence and probably integrated it biologically somehow, and telepathic. I don't even know, right? Like, I mean, for us for me to think that we've discovered anything at all, when you compare it to the entire universe, is pretty far fetched. Like, there's so many things out there.
And of course, the big rug pull that's always in the back of my mind is if Nick Bostrom turns out to be right and it's all a simulation. Because then you can almost everything paranormal and anomalous, you can go, oh, well, if it's a simulation, that makes sense.
Yeah. I think to a certain point, like if you look at quantum physics and the way observation sort of changes the outcome of certain things and the properties of certain things, you can assume that everything is we're creating everything with our collective consciousness, and that nothing is what it seems. Nothing is, we're kind of also a slave to it, which is kind of weird. It's like, well, if I can just create what I see and like why do I scrape my knee? Why can't I heal that? What's going
Mhm.
on?
Someone created the game, Dave, right? Someone at some point, a billion simulations ago, created the game. They had to.
Yeah.
There had to be.
Yeah.
Could
Or
be.
one. Okay, it's good. As I said, if we're in a simulation, I always said, well, the other thing is I think the simulation probably isn't about us.
What if
We
AI created us,
Yeah.
like the future AI, and they made the simulation, and then we created AI, and that AI ends up creating another simulation?
We
Yeah.
are. That's what's happening. I was up till 2 a.m. playing Baldur's Gate 3,
Nice.
which is fucking dope. And it's just, I think about just how the memory tries to catch up with the environment, right? It's just sort of creating and I
Yeah,
sort of
yeah.
look up, I almost think of the
Yeah,
atmosphere.
like this can right here might be completely hollow and empty and like see through from the other
Until
side
you just get there, right?
until I
You
just
just
get
sort of
there.
need it or get there, and it's clear. It's not even theory that we are there, right? Chat GBT, like
Yeah,
it happened, like we crossed the Rubicon. We are now post AI, and we're designing these games, and often I'm thinking like, just like, wow, like this life I'm living is it's so accurately rendered. Like
it
this
really is.
feeling like is
Mhm.
so like amazing. It's like I'll breaking down a little bit in some ways. My vision's not what it was, but I just imagine like it is a kind of compelling just slightly better resolution. It's than what I'm playing. How many years are we from Baldur's
Yeah,
Gate 3 being able to sort of mimic Tom or Dave's or Chris's life to just
yeah.
this like real like
Well,
tactile level?
there's nothing here that is happening here. It's all happening here. Like we're
Right.
Yeah.
all aware of this, right? Like
Yeah.
every sense is happening here. It's not
Yeah.
happening here.
That's why this book is
We interact
incredibly
through it.
unpleasant or great or super pleasant, just
Yeah.
depending. But
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's all about that.
And it's kind of like Donald Hoffman's thing about how that we've evolved. Not only does evolution not prepare us to perceive reality, it prevents us from perceiving reality.
yeah.
You
Fair.
know, that our senses are. Our senses are so ridiculously limited.
Yeah,
We share the planet with a lot of creatures that have way better sensory awareness than we, like dolphins,
yeah,
way clearer vision of their surroundings than we have.
yeah,
Bats,
yeah.
like, have you seen like interviews with people who are completely blind,
Oh
who have
yeah.
learned how to echolocate?
Yes, I have. That
Oh
was like
no,
on Ripley's or something when I was younger. This
Yeah.
kid was like just like going down and just yeah, that's a car, that's a
really?
building,
Yeah.
that's yeah.
And they've said, and they've described it, and like human beings learning to echolocate like bats, and their perception of their environment is way more way more in, expansive than our sighted view. That
Yeah.
they let's click and they see 360-degree
Hmm.
structures all around them.
Yeah. But it's a perception thing. Like if
Yeah.
you look at a caveman, like is who's more intelligent? I look at a scene and I can describe it in a book, detailed 600 pages of this beautiful scene, and he can just go, ugh, right?
Yeah.
Who's smarter? You know what I mean? It's like when I look at the Jetsons and they've got one red button that does everything. When's that
Hmm.
coming? Why
Yeah.
do I have 100 buttons on my remote? That's insane. I have four
Hmm.
red buttons on the same remote. I'm like that. This shouldn't. There's so many. I don't even know what most of them do. This
I'm
isn't.
tired of accidentally turning my TV off in the
Yeah,
dark.
this isn't what I signed up for. Where's the
Yeah.
one red button? Like
Yeah.
where's this promise of yeah.
It reminds me of the Michio Kaku, the futurist, who his theory of I no, I'm sure I mangled his name, but that idea that it's just like the technology will just shrink as we just get used to it. Like it's not even it's just as we gradually adjust, it is disappearing. It's just disappearing until smaller and smaller until it'll just be in our minds. And there's something
Yeah.
inarguable about it, obviously, because we're carrying around, this was what I mean, 500 yards of mainframes in the 1950s, or what,
Yeah.
this was a
Wait till
serious.
you start getting ads in your brain though. That's what's really going to happen. See, that's what people don't really think about. They're like,
Hmm.
"Oh, we're going to be able
Oh,
to talk to each other," or "Ooh, the AI is going to get us." No, what's going to happen is you're going to get gambling websites in your head all the time. Like it's
Yeah.
going to be ridiculous. You're going
But
to
will
have like,
but will we perceive them as ads, or will we perceive them as desires?
Oh
or it's just
god.
like somebody that walks up to you, you think is real, and like, hey, buddy, you should
Yeah.
really check out these slots over at whatever.
Yeah.
You
But you
know, and
might
I'm
just
like,
say
are
to your
you fucking
I really
real?
want to play blackjack right now.
Yeah,
And it's not
right.
because you've just experienced an ad for blackjack that you aren't even aware
Yeah.
of.
That's
You
crazy.
know,
I don't want that, but you're
Yeah,
probably right.
we're gonna have you're gonna have a number over your head, like in Black Mirror. It'll
well,
be
look,
like
who's to say?
all
Look,
that stuff.
is that really different from our genes telling us who, basically saying, "Hey, you should want to fuck that person."
Right.
Um,
Yeah,
that's that basically your genes, doing advertising for their own ends.
that's right. Yeah.
You know,
That's
Gotta
so
look at my genes again.
Mhm.
I have a question for you, Chris, just completely unrelated. Are there any, this is pure magic question. Who's out there that you dig that we should look at their work, or who's super awesome right now, or who is undiscovered? I just think like your site is, YouTube site is so cool. There's so much great stuff, so much talent on there. Is there anybody you recommend people check out?
There are definitely, like, I mean, if you guys aware of Darren Brown? He's like he's a legend, and I mentioned him here because he's not very well known in the western part of the world, but he's an absolute legend in the UK. He's a hypnotist, mentalist, and he tackles a lot of things. He's tackled remote viewing. He's tackled
Okay.
all these different things in a very entertaining manner. But yeah, he's hypnotized, someone to assassinate someone else, and like done these really crazy experiments and
Jesus.
done shows about it. He's an entertainer.
Oh, yeah.
So I suggest, I think you guys get a real kick out of him. He's a great showman. And
what was the name again?
Darren Brown.
Darren Brown.
He's got one special on Netflix called Push, but everything else was on the BBC, and I believe everything's available on YouTube. All his hour-long specials are available on YouTube. So,
all right. Well, I have another magic question then, as long as we're going back to it. I watched the video you put up recently where it was you and a bunch of guys doing close-up magic, just taking turns doing close-up. I forget what you called it.
Flash
lose. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
My question is, when did magicians become cool hipster bros and stop being guys and wearing cummerbunds?
There are
cool.
still.
I've been in the Magic Castle. I know.
Yeah, yeah.
But how did I looked at that room full of, and I'm going, how there's so many of you?
Yeah, it is funny. I only found out about other magicians when I started going to conventions, and in the conventions, like you find your tribe really quickly when you're among people you don't like, right? So you're like, you gravitate towards people instantly, and you're like, oh, let's go have a beer, so that kind of happened throughout the years at these magic conventions. Because I go to conventions that have 4,000 attendees, 4,000 magicians. There's one in Blackpool, England every year. I go to like 4 or 5 a year in different parts of the world with thousands of magicians. And there's a dealer's hall where all the magic's being sold. Copperfield comes through right at the beginning, and he does his little tour and all this stuff. But it's a whole society. It's a whole thing. But yeah, out of the 4,000, I found like 20 that I really like. So
yeah. And again, it's
talented 20 too.
Is there a cultural separation between magicians and illusionists?
No, I think only to the outside, really. I think it's just different instruments. It's when I do sleight of hand and close up magic, which is what I love doing, which is what I prefer doing. People go, oh, one day you'll have your own Vegas act or whatever. And it's like telling someone who plays the violin one day you're going to play the cello if you try really hard. It's just because it's bigger doesn't mean I'll like it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I do enjoy the close up stuff because it's all about connection. And although stage is fun, you don't have that connection. There isn't, and there's that veil as well. There is trapdoor. Is there like what's going on? Is there smoke in yours? But in person, you have none of that. You're completely unarmed. To really deal with what you're seeing. So
you don't have secret twins.
Yeah,
when you close up magic,
which is
you do close up magic. Yeah.
I have to share a terribly discouraging Copperfield story where my wife and I were in Vegas, and we're like, I'm fucking going to David Copperfield. Like, it's here. I'm gonna go check it out. Like, and Now, I'm not going to say that he was bringing his best game that day. It was feeling like he's probably done a few of these, and so,
Yeah,
but
a little sluggish.
we're in our big nice booth watching, watching the magic happen literally, and this tall, like 5'10", well dressed young woman just comes and sits in our booth with us, and I'm like, who the like. Hi. And then like 5 minutes later, he's like, can I have a volunteer from the audience? And he's like, you, yeah. She like goes up and I'm like, I'm in the audience. Like I'm paying. The fuck is this?
Mhm.
What's going on here? Like it was I have to say my dreams were dashed. So I think the close-up magic is really where the magic happens. I think that's the cool shit. That was like,
shows are like for like the general audience, but a few people are gonna get fucked in the way for those ones for sure. But he is a legend though. He's been doing it for such long. He does 9 shows a week and takes 11 weeks off in a row. And other than that, he's working straight 9 shows a week, 7 days a week.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
he's like seems 60. Unnecessary.
That's a lot of work.
He's a billionaire.
Yeah,
he has his own islands and everything.
Yeah. See, I don't know. Yeah, see, if I was even a millionaire, I don't think I'd show up for work anymore. At this point.
Dude, one of the things that Copperfield does, he gives VIP tours to his private secret museum, which he has a few, but the big one in Vegas is the biggest magic museum in the entire world. The best curated, biggest library, biggest poster collection, he's got everything from Houdini, his bathtub, his straitjacket. He's got everything from Robert Houdin, so like everybody who's ever been a magician, Mellini to Cardini, Slidini, all these guys, all the Dinis. And this is after his show in Vegas, after he's just finished 2 shows. He's hanging out till 2-3 in the morning, giving you this tour personally with like 6 other people doing
that's pretty fun
for like 2 hours. It's insane. And then sometimes, like one time we were like, oh, let's go get pizza after, and just lock down a restaurant. It's like 4 in the morning. Like this guy works, which is it's wild. But like you said, probably unnecessary.
He sounds much more virile and vigorous than me. He sounds.
Did you know his father worked at Roswell in 1947?
I did not know that.
Yeah, he showed me the card.
What the fuck?
So in his hangar, he also does a hangar tour. And by the way, there's like 30 people behind the stage pulling things like at 2 a.m. But there's this big jet and everything else, and then he has like a blueprint of an alien that he brings on stage. He has an animatronic alien that like Disney made or something. It's insane. It's like the circuits in it, like when you see the X-ray, are nuts. And he's got a UFO hanging. Not sure if it's real. But he does bring out a UFO during a show, like a massive one. It's incredible. But he showed me this card. It says Roswell, stationed in Roswell, was the Army, 1947 to whatever.
Wow.
Who's your Rushmore? Who's your magic Rushmore?
I would say Darren Brown's up there. Copperfield, you got to put him up there, and David Blaine.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's David Blaine. I was like, when the young woman sat down and like raised her hand, I was like, oh, well, okay. So is David Blaine pre-setting up his street sets?
No.
Or is he just a master of the intimacy?
No, he does close-up magic. But David's more of an endurance artist now. He is our Houdini.
Yeah. No question. Yeah.
But I'm saying, as a Canadian, you're not going to put Doug Henning or Kreskin on your list?
Before my time. I have a Kreskin ESP kit here, actually, that I just picked up, a vintage one. But I love Doug Henning as well, and he did a lot for magic. He was one of the first to really do the whole showman, type shows, and but that was before my time. Unfortunately, I wasn't.
That's my childhood, which of course, anytime a Canadian is famous for anything.
Yeah, there's Ted Outerbridge now. Currently, he's in Montreal. He's an illusionist. I think he's one of our only. We got Darcy Oak out in Canada as well.
Be proud, Dave. Be proud. You got to. There's a lot to be proud of here.
Canadians go far beyond proud. They go to insufferable immediately.
Hey, listen.
Like Rich Little's Canadian. Did you know? Max Sennett was Canadian. Did you know?
I didn't
Did
know
you
Rich
know?
Little. I know. I did.
Yeah.
I want the
Yeah.
list. I want the whole list.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Chris, you're the best, man. This was.
Yeah.
We could talk. Let's do this again.
Definitely.
I know Dave has to pee. That's really my own. There's
I
never
don't.
there's never a
So
reason
where
to let the
here's
pod end.
yeah.
Dave, come on.
I've cl- no. I clearly I have been replaced. This is not the real Dave Foley because I
It's
don't
like,
have to pee.
Well, what's going on? You've got the
It happened when he got muted.
yeah, the CIA glitch. Whatever the fuck
Yeah.
just happened. He's been replaced.
Look, just trust me. You're gonna like this Dave Foley a lot better.
All right, that's good. Listen.
I'll take his word for it.
I'm so I'm excited for Area 52. This is
Me too.
This is great. Debriefed.
And people, people, you gotta watch the Area 52 to learn about remote viewing, the history of it, and the reality of it.
And
Yeah,
both
people
sides,
gotta
I think
watch
very
that.
fairly presenting both
Yeah.
sides. Like you're
Yeah.
not like all in. I mean, I respect the healthy skepticism and then, but fascinating stuff. Really, exciting. Great to talk with you about all of this. Let's please do it again. Congratulations on just incredible success, and we could do a whole new one on just magic alone. So we
we didn't even touch on the sport model Bob Lazar puzzle.
That's
That
ooh. Let's double.
Yeah.
Well,
that's a whole other chapter.
A whole other. I'm glad to come back. We can do it anytime.
All right.
I appreciate you guys having me on.
We
big fan
will.
of the podcast. I watch them. I think you guys are doing great. Keep it up. Please
Thank
don't
you.
stop ever.
Thanks.
Really, really fun. So anytime you'd have me, I'd be happy to have you guys on mine one day.
Awesome.
That would be wonderful.
If you're ever out the East Coast, I mean, it'd be even great to get you in person and maybe do it that way. Yeah,
love it.
Yeah,
love it.
Montreal's-
I need to see the
Montreal's a
close up
great
magic. I'm a fan, so I want to see it. This is awesome.
I will keep it for in person.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Cool.
Ideal.
Thanks, Chris, so much.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, guys.